Good evening and welcome back. Well, if you're an independent shop owner, you might as well give up now. Because, breaking news, coronavirus face coverings in England's shops to be compulsory from 24th of July. Yep, in 11 days' time, Boris Johnson and his government have decided that, yes, we're going to follow some of the European countries as well as the rest of the United Kingdom and say that not only should face coverings be required on public transport, but also within shops. And they are mandatory because if you do not comply, you will be fined £100. Of course, it's halved if payable within 14 days, as they tend to do. But bear in mind that pubs and restaurants are reopening, and there is absolutely no chance you can wear a mask while you're eating or drinking. Bear in mind the ineffectiveness of the masks in terms of spreading it to other people. No, the virus is too small. Stopping you from getting infected by other people? No, because it would get in through your eyes, for example. And also the way that most people use the masks, and they are unaware of how incredibly ineffective they are if you don't use them properly. It's a similar thing, but far more convoluted than contraception, as it happens, that a lot of the pregnancy caused, despite using contraceptive protections, is because people don't know how to use the contraception properly. And if we have enough people who fail to use contraception, which is far easier, then with the masks, you've got no chance. Bear in mind, without getting too crass, that with something like a condom as contraception, if you put it on the wrong way around, and then you put it on the right way around, you can then still inseminate your partner. Well, just like the masks, except you're taking them on and off far more often, at least I hope so, using my analogy. But you're still spreading those germs, those particulates on the inside of the mask, on your face, every time you take it on and off. Unless, of course, you're cleaning your hands and anything you're touching between touches of the mask, which people don't do. If you put the mask on and then adjust it, you failed. It'll get in through your eyes as well. You failed. So, as far as it being ineffective, down to human error, that's a huge part, and you cannot police that. In terms of independent shops, of course, you're going to have a lot of people not wanting to comply with this, and therefore not putting themselves in a situation where they're going to get fined, in which case the smaller shops, which don't have the big online orders, aren't going to be able to stay in business. And then, of course, you've got to realise that during the past few months, during lockdown and the quarantine, we've all been forced into the same few shops. We haven't had to wear face coverings, and yet you've seen the cases drop. And yet now, when we're allowed to go to different places and we're not all forced into the same small spaces, touching things, putting them back, touching our faces, that now we have to wear face coverings. It seems far too little too late. As far as I can tell, there is no argument whatsoever that this helps from a health standpoint. None at all. And the funny thing is, of course, there are exemptions for children under 11. So are they admitting then that it's not fatal to young children, or it's not an issue for young children? And for people who have disabilities or breathing problems, like asthmatic, for example, because, of course, the masks do lower your oxygen levels, as has been shown in surgeons in operating rooms that I've discussed before. That the whole way this is being rolled out seems incredibly ineffective, and it doesn't seem to come from a health standpoint, which makes you wonder the motives behind this. And, of course, we are getting closer to a vaccine, as much as Bill and Melinda Gates are enjoying it. And in that, we're seeing not only progression from the vaccination standpoint, but also in other things that go along with it, including a subdermal implant that is beneath your skin that has its own readable chip within, kind of like an RFID implant used by hackers. That means it's basically a digital passport of your immunization, that when they would put the vaccination within you, it would also go along with a chip so that you can be scanned at any point in order to see that you do have this vaccination. It hasn't been used, as far as we know, on humans yet, not living humans anyway. It's been used on cadavers and animals, and is going to be trialled in the third world where they don't have enough paper documents to know who's doing what, and instead it can be digitally tracked and traced. And then, of course, it'll be moved over here. The issue with injecting anything is, of course, not knowing what goes inside, and I'm not an anti-vaxxer in any way. If it's something that is to prevent a deadly illness, like the MMR vaccine, of course, measles, mumps, and rubella, if it's for things like smallpox, then by all means, yes, we understand just how deadly those illnesses are. But for something that is not fatal, is not very damaging at all, especially if you're under 45 years of age, then I'd really rather say no. And the laws on the books are already trying to catch up with this to say, well, hey, then you'll be told to self-isolate if you can. And if you're not isolating, then we will force you to receive a vaccination. And who knows what is in there. We've seen ineffective vaccines for things like polio, again, from the Melinda and Bill Gates Foundation, which has shown that polio is on the upswing from the vaccination strands. And then we've also seen in India, I believe it is, infertility caused by things added into the vaccinations from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation on purpose, as in pleading guilty to it, as in saying that they had purposefully made people infertile. So it's these kind of things we go with, yes, vaccinations are a great idea. In their purest form, they're amazing. I wholeheartedly support them, and it's fantastic that medicine and biology can come this far. No doubt about it whatsoever. Fantastic medical improvements. But when it comes to something that isn't necessary, a bit like the flu vaccine that is rolled out and optional, it's more of a thing in America, I know, that those things are not compulsory and they're not necessary, and therefore people can choose to not take them. It's the same thing here. Of course, we've seen the infection rates can be arbitrarily increased by testing people for any sort of coronavirus antibodies, including of various types of the common cold, whether it be coronavirus or rhinovirus, that the markers that they're looking for can give them a false positive far too often, suggesting that, it's on the upswing simply because they've tested more people and the range of the test is far broader. So when it comes to these restrictions, as black-pilled or tinfoil hatted it might be, it seems to far more suggest that it is simply down to control in order to then get forced vaccinations, or at the very least make your life almost impossible to run without having a vaccination. And if things do get further like this, then of course you're looking at further community conflict and social disintegration, because people can't touch each other, interact with each other, they can't even smile at each other. So now it decreases the trust even further and just pits people against each other, that you're going to see either people having a terrible time in the United Kingdom and or decide to leave somewhere that is more freedom-loving. So I think just like the joke was with after Trump was confirmed as president in 2016, them crashing the site for the Canadian immigration website, it'll be a similar thing for the rest of the world. Anybody freedom-loving and not wanting a forced vaccination that will move over to another country, quite possibly the United States, as the last bastion of freedom. Maybe they're a bit lackluster at the moment, but I think if they are the last chance, and if they fall, then everyone falls. But trying to enforce this with masks wearing in shops is, of course, another difficult thing, that police are already overstretched. And as the saying that with you've got union concerns as well, saying that the shop workers will be encouraged to prompt customers to comply. They will not be expected to enforce the rules. So then it'll be, that person isn't wearing a mask. Time to call the police then. So really, the police are going to come out to that. Well, maybe they will, because they don't want to run the risk of getting stabbed in a more dangerous neighborhood of a kind of no-go zone. But it's such small things so frequently and so little and so late that this is mainly just then to encourage the Karens amongst the society in order to then, again, sow the seeds of doubt and conflict, which just rips the fabric of communities apart. That seems to be the thing. So for any independent shop owner, of course, you're really screwed unless you're going to try and do it in an American way where some of them have gotten around it, which is to say that you're exempt if you've got health illnesses, and it goes against, I think, it's the Fourth Amendment to ask you about that. In which case, we're going to assume that you have one of the health conditions, meaning you don't have to wear a mask if you're not wearing a mask, and it's as simple as that. So we could see a similar thing over here, that you will have businesses that think it absolutely pointless, and although of course I'm sure there will be court cases about this to say, is it legal what they're doing? Well, the way that the UK Constitution is set out is that it is far too lax and basically non-existent. We've got the Magna Carta, and that's about it. The laws can be changed far too easily within the United Kingdom. We do not have a freedom-loving constitution, and therefore any human rights within the UK depicting anything of even freedom of expression is then always down to the law, and they leave the small print in there to make it easier to follow on up things later, like if it's against the public health, for example, and that is where you will find a point in terms of face coverings that if you don't, it's against the larger public health, in which case it's legal and you're breaking the law. So that's the latest. Let's hope that they're putting this in to take effect in 11 days because the uproar is going to get them to change their mind. But as it stands, £100 if you're not wearing a mask. So I hope we've all got some good trolling masks at the ready, or online orders, either non-compliance or some good trolling. You could easily say things like masks are as ineffective as this government, things like that. And then how effective do the masks have to be? If you're wearing a scarf, for example, will that work? And why not? How long will we be asked to wear them? Well, until the vaccine, as far as I can see. But until next time, as always, stay healthy, stay fit. You're not at risk of dying from the coof if you're healthy. So as always, have a good one.